Before we get into this, only 25% you are subscribed, so please feel free to do so. And thank you to our patrons and members. They're on screen right now, and I could not do this without them. This is probably about right. I hope you can see me on camera. Hello everybody, welcome. This is my first impressions of Wanderer, the Fragments of Fate, and there's a plane overhead, so sorry about that. As you can see, I'm not in the UK right now, but I've got to say a massive thank you to the Wanderer team. They managed to get me to play the game before I left, literally the night before I left. In my plan video, I kind of panicked because I couldn't talk about it, but now I can. But I managed to play the game for about 2 hours. Fucking hell, this plane is taking a while. But this is a great background. We're at Mount Fuji. So I'm going to be talking to you about my first impressions of Wanderer. A couple of things will change for the release build, which were different in my build, but I'm going to try and quickly take you through my impressions of the game, of the 2 hours that I played of it. So essentially I played through the Boston segment. Obviously they all intertwined, so they're all a bit different, but I played through most of the Boston one, or the start of Boston, then onto the moon, and then I went on to a little bit of the Mayan temple area. So starting with the story, I guess I can't comment on the entirety of it. I never played the first Wanderer, but from the story, it seems from what I've seen of original gameplay for Wanderer Part 1, the non-remake, the original, it's the same game, 100%, same puzzles pretty much, same story, same everything, which if you liked Wanderer Part 1, you're gonna like Wanderer Part 2. It's the same, very loud motorcycle over there. The story seems exactly the same though, and puzzles to an extent as well. So yeah, that's all pretty similar. As for specs and everything, the resolution is native 90 Hz, which is fantastic. Big thumbs up there. The game feels really good and also looks pretty good as well. In the far distance, there's a bit of aliasing, but I am playing an early build. I've also got to be clarify that. I'm playing an early build with a couple of things that aren't final. But at least on my early build, the resolution was decent, but not the best I've ever seen. But it kind of makes sense because it's hitting that native 90 Hz all the time from what I played pretty much. Which is brilliant to see. Interactions as well, the VRAF engine is the main thing that they're pushing for this game, and it works really well. The body IK system, interaction with everything, persistence between levels is awesome. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But overall, I'm thoroughly impressed with everything that I've seen for Wanderer in terms of the interaction with the environment. There are a couple of objects that you can't pick up, which are a little bit less, say for example on a bookshelf, there's a load of books there. Some are props that you can pick up, some are just baked in items. So stuff like that, some of them you can't. But for the most part, interaction with everything is pretty bloody fantastic, if I do say so myself. It's on the upper echelons of PSVR2 games, which is awesome. And persistence, I mentioned a little bit there, persistence is pretty awesome. Between the moon level and the normal Boston level, you'll be kind of traveling back and forth to pick up items to solve problems in different areas. So for example, on the moon I needed a power saw and I had to go back to Boston timeline to get it, but it wasn't just in its set space in Boston, it was exactly where I left it, and that was for every single object. Every single object that I placed in the world was exactly where I left it when I got back, which is kind of mind-blowing if I'm honest. So that's really, really cool. Haptics are there, adaptive triggers are there on basically everything, which is awesome to see. In terms of PSVR2 features, this game is using the lot, and it's using them really, really well. For all the guns that you'd imagine and pulling on things, everything just feels like it has weight, which is pretty damn good. I want to talk about kind of the VR IK system as well, so your full body. You go between several bodies in Wanderer, and out of the parts of it that I've played essentially, the body IK system works really, really well for 95% of the time. There are a couple times where I kind of jumped onto objects that I didn't really want to, but for the most part, it feels natural, the animations look good, they're not too janky. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed by the implementation of your full body IK stuff. I was kind of scared it'd be a bit janky, but it's not, it's good. I kind of liken it a bit to Bone Lab, but less kind of out there than Bone Lab. Bone Lab is a lot more, trying to do a lot more with itself, whereas Wanderer kind of, at least so far, is you're all humanoid characters and you're all kind of the same, but you have different kind of strengths and a little bit of different movement. But it works better than Bone Lab because it's trying to be less ambitious, if that makes sense. But it works really well. Again, I stepped on a couple tables that I didn't really want to with the VRK system once or twice, but for the most part, it feels like you're inhabiting a body, which is both fitting for kind of the setting of the game as you're hopping between bodies and timelines, and also just from a VR perspective feels good. I can see this, if this is the starting off point for the kind of their IK system of VRAF, then it's going to go pretty far and do well with other devs, I think, if they want to pick it up into their own games. As for other notes, there's a handy unit companion which kind of gives you hints. Wanderer is very hands-off with its puzzle design, and I kind of felt smart for solving some of the puzzles. I spent about 2 hours in game, and I think if I look at like playthroughs, I only got until about like the hour mark in. So I'm kind of taking my time, mostly because I'm stupid with puzzles in games, to be honest. But like, yeah, it's very hands-off, although your handy unit companion, like your little watch kind of flies up and flies around. That's a cool mechanic in itself, but it can give you hints if you need them, and your storage and inventory is in that watch as well, and it feels pretty intuitive to kind of store things, and you can get upgrades for the watch as you go, which gives you some progression, which is really, really cool. I'm just watching the light here because as I record this I'm trying to get some cool photographs, which I'll put on screen now. Actually, here's my cool Fuji photographs. As for animations and NPCs, I was really looking forward to seeing how kind of the NPCs talk and move, and you can tell that Wanderer is like an indie production or AA production. It's not like Half-Life Alyx level most of the time. Some of them are pretty close, to be honest, in terms of facial animations, but it's not like photoreal, but they are really good. Some of the mocap work or whatever they're using to animate, you can kind of see through it a little bit every now and then, but again, this isn't the final build of the game, so some of the hiccups that I had won't be in the final build, I don't think. Yeah, essentially, that sort of animation work, when it works as intended, it works really well, so I'm happy with that. And the variety of characters both that you interact with and inhabit throughout the time period is really cool, like speaking to certain characters and also embodying, say, an astronaut is such a big change from some of the other characters that in the VR world, I really felt that, like the weight and the player model was seriously cool. The only thing that I'd really say that I didn't enjoy too much was the combat, but I've got to be honest, the combat is not final in my build. It's one of the things that when I spoke to the contact that I have at Mighty Eyes, they said the combat is the one thing that's not finalized, that needs a bit of extra work from my build, so I don't want to comment on the combat too much. It feels pretty good in terms of its fundamentals, but it does just feel a bit janky in its state that I played it in. But again, it's not final. It'll be probably completely different in the review builds that you see, so I'm just going to not really touch on that too much. I think in the final build, when it works as intended, it's going to be good, so that's fine. As for puzzles though, I do feel like they're pretty challenging for a player like me that kind of gets stuck on some puzzles sometimes, but I did enjoy the mental challenge a little bit. But overall, like, the main thing for me, I think, from this first impressions of kind of my ramblings is the world. Like, they've built a world that is impressive to be in. From like drowned Boston, where you see downed planes and like decrepit buildings, a bit like The Last of Us, is seriously cool. It's kind of the closest you can get to The Last of Us world in VR. As you can see from like the footage I'm showing you right now, it looks fantastic. And in the headset, it does look fantastic, in the OLED panels especially. And then being on the moon, that was genuinely just like awe-inspiring, in the Mayan temples as well. There's just so much to interact with in these worlds and so much to see. And that's the main thing for the build of Wanderer that I played, at least, is that I felt like I was there, especially it helped with the native 90 hertz. But overall, those are my impressions. I'm impressed. There's some work to be done in certain areas, but I'm playing early build, so I'm sure the work has already kind of been done in those areas. But this gets my seal of approval so far, from at least from what I've played. Definitely check out some reviews when they go live, whenever they go live, because obviously that'll be on the full game. I'm not sure when mine will be out on those, but check some other reviews who you trust. But this is how I found the game. But I was also sleep deprived at the time and about to go on a plane, so it was like the 2 hours before I left to the airport, I played 2 hours of Wanderer, so I was a bit wired. But overall, I did really enjoy it, so I guess that's a good sign. If sleep deprived me can enjoy it, and I really, really did, then hopefully the main product of everything ties it all together in the final build. But those are my impressions of Wanderer. Obviously, you can see my gameplay on screen right now. Puzzles are fun, but kind of challenging. The NPCs in combat weren't in their final state for me, so I can't really comment on those. The resolution was good. PSVR2 features, good. Writing, very good as well. Didn't really mention that too much, especially for the handy unit that helps you. I found the writing was quite engaging. You felt like a person and an entity rather than like an NPC with just written dialogue. But overall, really happy, really impressed. Again, check reviews when they come out. But thank you all so much for joining me today. If you've got any questions, leave them down below. My time zone's a bit off though, so it'll take me a while to reply. But if you've got any other burning questions that I can answer, then I will. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.